All right, guys. Thank you guys for joining. We're going to start now. I think more and more people keep coming in, and we'll just let them roll on in when they arrive. Thank you guys for taking the time out of your day for joining us with this webinar on premiumization, getting customers to pay more for your brands. Today's webinar is going to be recorded. So for those who don't make it or those who make it, I want to relook at some of the stuff we talked about today. We will send this out. If you guys have any questions, there should be a Q&A box. Feel free to just type that in, and at the end, we'll be answering some questions. As well as if you're having any sound or video issues, obviously send that forward as well. I don't believe there's any issues. There shouldn't be, but in the event there is, I'm going to blame it on the webinar service. So first off, thank you guys. It's great to see I'm seeing a lot of different representation across the brands today. So it's great to see some interest in this topic that, it's obviously something I'm very passionate about, but I'm only passionate about it because it's so relevant and so helpful to a lot of our clients. So I first wanted to start with discussing the outline of today. So we're going to discuss a little bit about the background of one of the kind of key challenges with why premiumization is such a hot topic right now. And then we're going to look at where the opportunity is with it. So we've kind of been focusing on how we can bring this to life for clients and help them, help market better and more effectively with their brands and products. And we'll give an example, and then we'll obviously have some time for questions. So at any point, just when you have the question, you can just feel free to just pop it in that box, and we'll save those towards the end. Anything we can't get to, I'll follow up the email, and we'll direct that later on. So everything's focused today on premiumization and how we can get customers to pay more for our brands and products. First, I wanted to give you a little background about myself. My name is Jason Marticello, and obviously I'm working on behalf of Beezy, but one of the things I always mention to people when I tell them is not my 30 years of experience, but rather that I lost 100 pounds and how I got into the field. And one of my story is pretty simple. I lost all this weight, and I got curious at how and why I did it. And I moved into health. I went down a health route. I got a master's in health and exercise physiology. And I worked in the field. And after working in the field for many years, I come to a massive realization that everything that had to do with my weight loss as well as changing other people had very little to do with health or any of the stuff I've learned in school, but is more about psychology, social influence, and all these subconscious factors that influence how we make our choices and how we can, repeatedly make them. So I pivoted into behavioral science, and I was very fortunate to work with a small boutique firm under Dr. David Neal, and I got to work with many of the scientists that kind of pioneered a lot of the work in the industry. And I went back to business school, and I ended up moving up to New York, and I started working with Beezy, which I'll highlight now. Beezy is a behavioral science agency, and we're strictly focused on taking behavioral science as a means to helping our clients improve their commercial outcomes. So we combine a lot of different, not only just rigorous behavioral science that I would say is a cut above a lot of what's in industry currently, but also melds that with some of the best marketing strategy and consumer insights to make stuff very practical and actionable for our clients. So that's the background. Let's get into premiumization. So the key, many of you guys may be familiar with what's going on in the industry, but it really gets summarized by a lot of private label brands and store retail brands are coming out of the woodworks and are starting to chew into share of some of the national brands that have been around for decades. And I find no image better represents this than this issue than this one right here. So we have Golden's mustard. It's one of the oldest continuously operating mustard brands in the United States, third largest manufacturer of mustard. And then we have Great Value Walmart brand, which is almost a category equivalent of Golden. And, you know, this is, I think there's a couple of key things to take away from here is store and private retail brands are becoming category equivalents with national brand names. And also in certain cases are charging more. This is kind of like an interesting paradox here. I kind of wonder what is the purpose of a brand if you know, some new companies are able to just come in and charge more with the for having a similar category, a similar product in the category. So why is this happening and what's going on? You know, if we look at this on a deeper level, and if we understand, you know, many of you guys may be familiar with Ehrenberg Bass and how brands grow. And one of the things that, you know, brands focus on is creating distinctive assets, creating differentiation with customers. And, you know, there's a lot of benefit to that. But if we understand what customers are doing in their minds, they're kind of doing the equal and exact opposite. You know, they're actively trying to resist differentiation. They're trying to simplify, bucket, and categorize everything as one and the same. So as brands effortlessly work to kind of, you know, say my product's different than the next on the shelf, customers are doing the complete opposite, which makes that a very challenging obstacle for a lot of brands. So, you know, we need to look at more about not just being different and, you know, just using distinctive assets to just separate ourselves, but we need to show that we're valued to be able to be chosen amongst other brands that are coming in from the private labels in store retailers. Okay, so if we have to look at this, you know, at a category level, if we step back, okay, we can look at, you know, so what we have here is kind of a graph, and on the y-axis we have category consumption, and on the x we have time. And if we break this down, we can look at like category growth in phases. So, you know, if we look at it, obviously we have penetration, which is obviously always going to be a major driver of category growth. But as you get more mature in a category, the reliance on penetration decreases, and we have to shift to more premiumization strategies. So historically, we've always focused on penetration, maybe some loyalty, but there's actually, for brands to grow, we need to actually look at ways in which we can premiumize. So I think this is a fantastic graph, okay, or a chart, whatever we want to call it here. But you know, if we look at a lot of how brands grow, it's been focused on penetration. And historically, you know, to compete, they would just cut costs. Okay, so a combination of cutting costs and having massive reach, they're able to kind of, you know, win the category. However, now we have a lot of these store retail brands, you know, Target's Market Pantry, Amazon Basics, Whole Foods 365, Walmart's Great Value, amongst, you know, plethora of others. And they're putting upward pressure on a lot of the national brands. And for them to win, they need to focus on premiumization. They need to create a more premium offering, and that's what we're going to get to next. So what is premiumization? Premiumization it's pretty simple. It's just getting customers to pay more for your brands and products. I think there's a couple of key things of interest here. You know, it really hinges on the perception. That's one of the key things. You know, value is all relative to what a customer perceives at that point and moment in time. So that creates a lot of opportunity knowing that. And that's where we're going to pivot to next. So let's first define, you know, I want to clear up a little bit of confusion sometimes when we think about premiumization. Premiumization is not just Gucci or Prada. I know that's kind of like what people think when we hear the word premium, but it's not luxury. It's literally increasing the average category selling price or brand selling price as it relates to our clients. So, if we're looking at, say, in the toilet paper category, if it's 84 cents a roll, we're looking at increasing that to 89 cents. Okay. So it's not luxury, but it's simply just small incremental price increases. So how do we get those? Okay. Once we understand there's, premiumization's a way to grow, we got to look at how can we obtain this. Okay. So this is kind of Beezy's approach to premiumization. And let me just break this down for you. So we obviously, it's a brand's job to create a demand for a product, or as well as the brand itself. And then, how we focus on increasing premiumization is through 5 strategic paths of premiumization. And then there's also 3 levels for which that this can be implemented on. And ultimately, this will increase our customers' willingness to pay more for a product. So we're going to double down in each of these areas, or in each of the paths. So where do the paths come from? Okay. So it's first worth noting that, the paths come from come deep from science. Okay. So a lot of how customers value brands and products is not so linear as one may think. There's not just a simple recipe for that. So when we look at, how customers value brands and products, we went deep into the literature, looking at different types of different disciplines of science to look at how angles where customers can perceive value in different ways. So, and by looking at the different dimensions, we're looking at ways where we can find competitive advantages amongst competitors to isolate opportunity. So let me break down some of these 5 paths a little bit more. So first, evolutionary psychology. This is one of the big areas where a lot of customers are willing to pay for a need for safety. We've been designed to survive and reproduce, and to do that, we need to rely on known quantities, things that are predictable. So brands and products can charge more to the extent that they can appeal to these types of needs in life. So one of the examples I always give is like hotels and restaurants. We all may be familiar, when we're around traveling, there's always a plethora of options. However, when it comes to brand names, we know and can predict that experience, that stay, what it's going to be like. So customers are willing to pay more for that because we know it's going to be safe. We know it's going to be an ideal opportunity for us to appeal. We're going to simply appeal to our need for safety in that case, instead of having an unpredictable experience that may lead us in the wrong area. So one of the things I'm going to mention is, especially for the safe bet, this area that comes out of evolutionary psychology, but how can this relate to more consumer packaged goods, and how can we appeal to our customers to want to buy us out of that need for that reliable, safe, and known, familiar experience? So the next one we have here is economics. So obviously a lot of people, we have this inner need to want to grow, challenge, progress, and customers do want innovative things. So this is kind of a little bit of a reciprocal to our need for safety because it requires change. So to the extent that customers perceive innovation in something that's new, they'll pay more money for it. The next is cognitive psychology, which kind of ladders down to creating a memorable experience. Customers will pay more for experience, okay? And there's plenty of ways in which we can do this, okay? So, when we say experience, we may think of like something like Disney, someone who goes like to major lengths to, think about before they go to the actual park, to actually in the park and arousing emotions, getting engagement, and then creating a more memorable, positive experience. Now, those same principles can be thought of on an actual product we buy in the store. It's just many times we just kind of think about the product itself and just using it, as opposed to thinking about buying it in advance. What is it like to shop for it? What is it like to research it? What is it like to use it? What is it like to open it? So there's many layers. And to the extent that we can make an experience more memorable, this is another opportunity to create more value or to extract more value out of customers. I did want to take a step back to economics and, innovation. I did want, obviously all of these are based on perceived value. And, the example I always give with innovation is, pods, Tide Pods. I know there may be some P&G folks on, this is a disruptive innovation that, that did very well. On the other end, I always, some of the work I've done with Gillette is, we measured innovation from the customer's perspective. And we realized that, although Gillette is it's the best a man can get, the customers didn't perceive a lot of innovation. So one of the takeaways is this is all from the angle of the customer's perception. So, for it to be innovative, the customer needs to think it. It's not an internal thing from the brand company side. Now we're going to biology. Biology, people are willing to pay more money to conserve energy. The staple example I always give with here is, Amazon. They go to ridiculous lengths to get people to stop click, to remove friction, to reduce the amount of clicks, to remove thinking, to remove cognitive effort. So to the extent that we could do that, customers will be willing to pay more. So last one is social psychology, and this kind of combines, ladders down to what can we do to enhance social and self-image, and people will pay more to be connected with their friends or just deepen their identity. So, and we're going to give some more examples of these in a second, but those are the 5 paths. So one of the next areas I want to dig into here is the different paths of premiumization and how it relates to just a category. I think the bottled water category is a fantastic example that illustrates premiumization at its finest. They took a category where, in other words, water is virtually free and accessible to 99% of households, yet people are not only paying for bottled water, but they're paying premium prices. And it's interesting here. So like, if we look at Life Water, for example, this what they're focusing on here is paying more by enhancing image. They took a bottled water and literally just created a nice fancy package that allows people to express some more of their image, their identity, and show it to others, and people are paying more for it. Another example we have here is with Smart Water, and mind you, these are coming from some of your big CPG brands. So, I'm not quite sure what's underneath a lot of the water, but these are just some really good executions of some of these premiumization pathways. So pay more for innovation. So, water, like this is just an example of just taking water and adding things to it, which is becoming a popular opportunity in the different types of drink space, such as, adding sparkling, making it alkaline, adding antioxidants, adding, saying it's a certain type of pH. So finding these right levers for getting people to pay a premium, there's definitely opportunity to innovate in that space. Okay, great. So now we're going to move on in into the case example here. So I kind of wanted to break down a little bit of how we go about premiumization strategically to help our clients. So here's an example from that we've recently done, and one of our clients, they are, I'm not going to indicate who they are here, but it is in the motor oil category. And so here's an example of what the current issue is. It's pretty representative of the premiumization issue we highlighted previously, but they actually branded the issue. They call it the muddy middle. And what they're experiencing, our clients, obviously one of the ones in the muddy middle. There's a lot of private label retail store brands on our left that are intruding on some of the major retailers. There's one that kind of has a predominant share in the space, but they call it the muddy middle because they need to get in, they need to get out. They're getting squeezed by a lot of retailers, and we need to figure out ways for which we can overcome not only store and private retail, but also the other brands in the category. So how do we go about this? There's kind of two main ways. One is a premiumization analysis. So when we look at, we obviously, I mentioned the 5 paths, okay? And one of the key things I wanted to mention with the 5 paths is they're not mutually exclusive. Why we narrowed on the 5 paths is because they're comprehensive, but we could make like 10 paths, we can make 7 paths. But the point is, and we had more, but we narrowed down to what is most effective for identifying competitive advantages within a category. So the goal is to be exhaustive, to find ways in which customers will perceive value, but also to make it to make it effective for actionability, to identify, and that's to identify competitive advantages. We want to identify where to play, where not to play. Okay, so in this instance, so what we'll do is we'll measure customers along these 5 dimensions. So we have some validated instruments to capture these dimensions, the customer's perceptions in these 5 spaces. And we recognize a couple big swathing, like white spaces, big opportunities to command a price premium. So once we go from that strategic analysis, we need to figure out how to execute and how to, bring this to market. So, I do want to mention a lot of cases, a lot of people are, doing behavioral science, and, I commend the efforts. I think that's fantastic. They're finding ways to maybe even premiumize too. And from our perspective, it's, very important to look at it strategically first and tactical second. A lot of companies are, just getting right into the tactics, but yet, they may lose that long-term vision and, keeping that competitive advantage against their other competitors. So what we like to do is find these big opportunity spaces first, and then figure out how to action in them to create long-term competitive advantage, sustainable competitive advantages. So the first path is looking at strategic. The second is testing different opportunities to premiumize. And this is just a simple design of our experiment we ran. We have obviously the independent variables and the behavioral dependent variables. And I'm going to break down the independent variables but I just want to kind of give you a high level of the flow. So we have, 3 branches here, and ultimately we're looking for ways in which we can untap value from customers. So the first branch is we're looking at different contexts for which customers will pay a premium price. And we all know that, like, a lot of our products, they're now, the ways in which we can buy them and shop them and experience them are completely, they're completely changing. There's different, we're seeing things in different places, we're seeing them online. So, and we're able to look at how people are not only adjusting their, how much we're really interested in looking at how people are willing to pay more based on different locations. And I'll double down on that in a sec. The second one is looking at testing framing pack cues. So we recognize there's this opportunity with ease, and we'll be testing different cues that frame that, and which ones are gonna untap the most value. Okay, and the third is the control. Obviously, we test everything relative to a control. We want to look at what's the difference. We want to be able to look for effective change. Last thing was, all of our experiments involve a behavioral dependent variable. This is just across the board. We use a skin in the game approach. We try to mimic the behavior as opposed to asking what would someone choose, what would someone buy, how much would they pay. We want to invest. We want people invested in their actual outcome that they would most likely choose. And this is one of our flagship things we do with all of our research experiments. So to break down the context, so we're going to look at, this is the branch one here. Branch one, as I mentioned, there's all different ways where people frame up and determine that this is a good price to pay. And when we test context, we're able to look at how different products in a block or either on a website can elicit different reference prices. And so for instance, if I go into the store, and I see motor oil in the motor oil category, obviously that's going to create a reference point, and then or a reference price relative to all the motor oils. They'll be in different prices. If it's in the front of the store, that may elicit a different reference price, and it may increase the amount a customer is willing to pay for that product for a lot of subconscious reasons. It's in the front, it must be better. It's on the top shelf. So there's all these little placement things that really matter. Or, on Amazon. So or on any type of website, if what I'm buying in that store, if the variability of my purchase or my basket size is pretty wide, as opposed to just a grocery store that's maybe low, it may increase my willingness to pay for that actual brand or product. So if I'm buying expensive tires, this may seem very negligible, as opposed if I'm just in the grocery or in Walmart and I'm buying groceries at that point in time, that are all $1, $2, $3, $10, $5, whatever they are, that price may seem excessive. So understanding what creates reference prices, reference points in terms of pricing, we can impact someone's willingness to pay. Okay. The next, this next one is that second branch there. So, we recognize ease as a big opportunity for the client, and there's different ways in which the perception of easy can be communicated, can be illustrated, and there are many executions that we tested to identify what is going to be the most effective in terms of eliciting a premium price tag and also eliciting choice. So there's really little nuanced things that such as easy versus easy, like just using the letters versus the word, using visuals, showing where it is on the visual. And then also you can communicate the benefit of that. So sometimes, at the end of the day, we're looking at what is that precise framing of that cue that's going to elicit that higher willingness to pay. And that's what we're going to want to isolate. So what we have is, stepping back here. So this is an example of, this is the way we approach premiumization, looking at it holistically. We first start with the brand, and we run through that premiumization analysis, looking at these 5 paths of premiumization. Okay. Within that, there's these 3 levels. We can premiumize at the brand level. Okay. We can also premiumize at the product level, as well as the context. Okay. And then from there, we're going to look at different ways and test them using different behavioral science methods, as we just discussed, for ways to identify what's going to be the most increase the willingness to pay a premium for that brand or product. So how can BZ help? There's, as we mentioned, there's two key things when it comes to premiumization in terms of our approach. One is looking for more or less where to play and where not to play, identifying these white spaces with this category analysis for premiumization opportunities. The second one is the testing those paths. So when we recognize what are within those 5 paths to premiumization, what are the tactical executions we're going to be testing? Is it going to be framing? Is it going to be a pack? Is it going to be executed on a pack? And this is it going to be a situation or location? But the idea is we take a strategic path and then align that and test that behaviorally to find which tactical executions are going to most effectively premiumize that brand in wherever they are distributed. So we are 1:30. We're about 30 minutes, a little over 30 minutes past the hour, and I think we're going to open things up for questions. If anyone has any questions, feel free to pipe them in the Q&A. As of right now, we have no questions, so I'm going to let people decide to stay. And feel free, I want to actually just thank you guys, those who participated in the webinar. If anyone has questions, here's my email, here's my phone. Feel free to check out our website. Happy to send any further information. Any other questions, don't hesitate to ask. I wanted to thank you guys. Hey, Adrian, got your question. Excellent. I'll recite the question in case anyone else has a similar. Does your work include recommending cues that might resonate with different types of consumers, e.g. some form of segmentation analysis? So a lot of our work will include recommending cues. Usually that, in between a phase, identifying the strategic paths and the tactical execution is some type of a workshop that bridges some of those, bridges the strategic opportunities and brings hypotheses and idea generation to the types of cues. And that usually involves a blend of behavioral science and, some of the internal knowledge and learnings of the company. So to answer your question is, yes, it does. It involves combining some behavioral science with insights from the client's side to come up with the most effective cues.